March 17th, 1970. Dear Z, very pleasant surprise for me seeing you again. Old friends are rare. Thank you for your concern and convey my further thanks to your mother. I know you both surrendered your holiday time to be present. The people are becoming very responsive, encouraging to say the least. We love you all. You have certainly matured into a fine-looking young woman. I knew you would. You were a beautiful baby. Return this form and write me a letter at the same time and run it all down. School, politics, futurities. I want to know it all. All that you don't mind officials knowing also, that is. You may also have a half an hour with me here, when you can get one. But that is all, and that only if you don't mind the civil service sitting in. This is my 10th year of this. Actually my 28th, but I was too numb to feel the first 18. All for the events of one riotous day, 15 minutes to be exact, and now they would take all of the rest. You are aware that 4,500, note, the number of the California statute which makes the death penalty mandatory for any inmate serving a life sentence who is convicted of assault on a non-inmate, end note, means automatic death penalty. One intimation of displeasure and the antibodies rush to destroy you. Well, I am positively displeased, and I am positively destined to remain so. Return this form with all dispatch. I would like very much to relate and exchange. Some may have to get hurt, but power to the people. George. March 27th, 1970. Dear Z, I've been attempting to establish correspondence with you for several years now. However, being locked up in close confinement has kept me in a position in which I've not been able to ascertain your full address. I still don't have the zip code. Now I have been able to learn which one of your parents' names you use officially. The chaplain here was kind enough to help me. Did he talk to you yet? When he does, thank him, for he went to some lengths to help us. I was very pleasantly surprised to hear from the chaplain that you live so close to the prison. The only exchange I've had with intelligent females or any females outside my family in all these years is limited to the brief, self-conscious glances of the visiting room. My lawyer is the first woman I've talked to since my arrest. That must be a record. Distressing is only a mild way of putting the events of these last 106 years. I haven't been able to adjust. They adjust, they keep telling me. I keep trying to tell them this just isn't the kind of thing I favor. I've been picked up and swept along by events long gone out of control. Perhaps in the next 106, I'll be able, with an assist from wonderful people like your mother and you, to win enough of the control factor to get out and make the existence of places like this unnecessary. I do have plenty of time. I'm in my cell 23.5 hours a day. I try to employ all of it, except the 3 in which I sleep, in something related to antithesis. But there remain long periods of wasted time in this 23-hour day, back to bed, one foot stacked lengthwise atop the other, gazing into the light. It would save my eyes and ease my mind a great deal to have long, informal, newsy, and perhaps endearing messages reaching me here from time to time from San Jose. If we can reach each other through all of this, fences, fear, concrete, steel, barbed wire, guns, then history will commend us for a great victory won. If so, it will be your generosity and my good fortune. George. April 3rd, 1970. Dear Z, I have your message here beside me now. It was delivered 10 minutes ago. I do not think Nkrumah has failed either. As for me, I plan to save all of your correspondence so that when we are old people and our enemies are no more, we can steep ourselves in it again, in an atmosphere where all the related parts are in harmony, and we can recall the fearful, traumatic, and desperate days at the barricade without rancor. Did you receive the message I sent you last Thursday? Let me know. We'll be forced to confirm each of our letters, you know. Did you mail this one that I have now, Thursday, April 2nd, or March 27th? If the former, it took only 1 day to reach me. I cannot read the postmark, it's too faint. I dug the poem. I suspect that we are of kindred spirits, soldier. My mother and sister say so, though they never really understood me. But I will forgive them. They will learn better. We will have much to discuss in the days ahead. If what I suspect is true, history sweeps on apace, and we mustn't let it escape our influence this time. I have messages from Narodnik and Nihilists. They are man and woman, coefficients in the production of. One cannot exist without the other. Narodnik excites a defense reflex within the beast. The beast encircles, infiltrates, and will destroy Narodnik. Without Nihilists to enforce and protect, pure nonviolence is a false ideal, a contradiction. Send me some photographs of you and your family. I like the card. That is the sort of thing I need to take me out of this cell on occasion and remind me that the world could be beautiful. You take care of yourself. I need you. You have my sincere regard, soldier. George. April 11th, 1970. Dear Z, I received your letter late this afternoon. I've picked it up 25 times since then, reading things into it, holding it to my nose, fixing myself on the picture I have of you in my mind. I am very pleased to have someone so warm and so soft and so lovely come into my miserable life. I haven't met any selfless, intelligent, mentally liberated, and aggressive women before now, before you. I knew that you existed, but I had never had the pleasure. I am uneasy thinking that you may be attracted to the tragedy of me. I hope not, because my response to you is perfectly personal. Your eyes, your voice, your walk, hands, mouth. It just occurred to me that I've never noticed any of these things in Francis or Penny or Delora. I like you a lot. But I am in such a hurry. My life is so disrupted, so precarious, my inclination so oriented to struggle, that anyone who would love me would have to be bold indeed or out of their head. But if you're saying what I think you are saying, I like it. If I have flattered myself, please try to understand. I like the way you say it also. Over the next few months, we'll discuss the related problems. By the time I've solved these minor ones that temporarily limit my movements, we'll have also settled whether or not it is selfish for us to seek gratification by reaching and touching and holding. Does the building of a bed precede the love act itself? Or can we do it on the road until the people's army has satisfied our territory problem? That is important to me, whether or not you are willing to do it on the road. You dig? I'm more identifiable with Ernesto than with Fidel. When this is over, I immediately go under. I want to see you. I understand the problems involved, money and transportation, but use your imagination, soldier. Are you getting your Social Security? That shall hold you until you find work. I hate to appear selfish, but you have destroyed my peace here. I have a lot to tell you and some questions. I'll love you till the wings fly off at least, perhaps beyond. My love could burn you. However, it runs hot, and I have nearly half a millennium stored up. Mine is a perfect love, soft to the touch, but so hot, hard, and dense at its center that its weight will soon offset this planet. George. April 16th, 1970. Dear Z, did you receive my love letter? I wrote it on the 11th or 12th. John likes you and your mother, but he does indeed like you. I wish very much that I could have been around him when he was growing up. He had a hard time identifying himself. He was forced to beat on some of the blacks because of the big green eyes. Used to be blue, and gold hair. He had to beat on the whites because he was a nigger. They used to write me about it, the others, but everyone in that house in Pasadena is so harebrained. Well, he had to work out his problems on his own. Then he turned out to be a beautiful black man-child, is a testimony of his own dogged strength. I love him more dearly than I love myself. I've been thinking of you. Write me. I know how hard you are working and understand the limitations regarding time, but when you get a moment between rounds, remember that I want to hear from you. Send the photographs I asked for too. Power to the people. Love, George. April 18th, 1970. Dear Z, I have your message of April 16th in here with me now. Arms, holds, and understanding. Me and you. Your mother must be a wonderful person, or perhaps it was the revolution, or maybe some guy, whatever. This guy thanks the forces that be for forming you so that you favor me. Communion can never be selfish. They are opposing terms, diametrical opposites, one the antithesis of the other. Communion across the cultures, the nations, the planets, the universe. That's the name of our thing. The question that I posed as I think about it was a ghost from the really dark days, when all of my smiles were merely gestures to put people at their ease. I was motivated then by disgust alone, and anything that distracted me from a work-filled 21-hour day was considered a hindrance, an obstacle, or an object of self-interest. I thought of individual relationship as a flight from the existential reality of individual responsibility to the whole, to the people. I considered it selfish to look for some individual to touch and hold and understand, because all of my time belonged to all of the people. That the deep, burning, incessant thing centered in my guts was hatred alone. That people who, especially in the joint, look for another individual to relate to instead of the people's struggle, full time, was lonely, was weak. But I've gone through some changes since then. I saw and read about Angie Davis and some other females of our kind, and I realized that perhaps it was possible that this country has produced some females like those of Cuba or Vietnam. When you re-entered my little cloister last year, I was more than ready for such an encounter. The look of love from a rebel breed. I like it. I'm weak. George. April 27th, 1970. Dear Z, this is just a thinking of you note, because I was thinking of you. It occurred to me how keen you were 10 years ago when I was out, and we were both 18. I've envied you that intelligence over these years. Had I been fortunate enough to have had someone to relate to my need in that area, perhaps things would have been different. But far from me to complain, I probably wouldn't have listened anyway. Don't compare yourself to me in such things as sleep and endurance. I don't sleep any more than I do because I can't really. I just don't like the idea of lying around unconscious for hours, and then, too, my metabolism is pitched so high that I actually need activity to feel well. I do know what you meant about beauty. The pleasant features that remain to us in this life. I haven't seen many personally, but I know they exist. Otherwise, you wouldn't exist. F, your mother, and the will to resist and win couldn't exist. Evil can never take full control, but for me, you are my first beautiful, really beautiful experience. Honestly, you are. And you'll just have to relent on the issue of photographs. Give F some of the family, kids and all. I know where you're at, and I dig it, but consider where I'm at. I love that guy, T. Are there many like him? And M? You know about M. Well, he was 1 out of 1,000. It took great courage. Are the ratios that bad everywhere? I'm sure you know what I want here. With people like these around, my job won't be half as hard as I've always anticipated. I must be about my work, comrade, and no more reference to my ability to accept love. Perhaps my sensibilities are somewhat dulled, but not like that. I'll never fail you. It just won't happen. Sincerely, in love and revolution. George. May 2nd, 1970. Dear Z, time seems to be passing much faster these last few months. Wonder where it's running to. What's building? Will I be able to control the outcome of whatever? This is for certain. It's going to get worse. Things will become much more difficult before anything good can come out of this. People like Nixon and the ventriloquist that make him speak hold forth by default. The good element has not contested them vigorously, for the very same natural reason that allows flotsam to rise to the surface. These people have come by the means and power to cause great discord and suffering. They met little resistance on their way up. Good people don't like to cut throats. This unnatural arrangement that allows the sediment to remain on the top while the cream rests on the bottom can be righted in only one way. The VC have the idea. They understand a trial of combat and ordeal by fire. You simply can't reason with people like them. They have too much to lose by being reasonable. They make my head ache. I must get off the subject. Your little soulful tune did make me smile. I must confess that you have startled me on occasion. The kinship, your sensitivity, almost like we lived all of it before. You know me too well. I suspect you've been peeping with those big, delightfully sad eyes into my sad soul. Beautiful sister, desirable woman, quintessence of revolutionary woman. Ne plus ultra of the new rebel breed. If I did take you into my heart, and if I didn't find myself loving you, and if this love wasn't as easy and natural as breathing, there would be something very wrong with me. Things have fallen apart, haven't they? That realization must come to all of us. It is a prerequisite to remedy. Send it to me a piece at a time in your letters. It's best that way. Take care of yourself. This cat needs you. Love, George. May 8th, 1970. Dear Joan, note, a member of the Soledad Defense Committee. End note. You may never read this letter. My correspondence is being limited at present to those approved prior to my most recent troubles. However, this limiting policy is not legal, nor has it been clearly stated. So if this message reaches you, be informed that I have also sent with it a request to have you placed permanently on my visiting and mailing list. It is a formality that the state requires we go through in order to further assure its complete control over our lives here. But I don't mind. Ever since the earliest days of my youth, you should recall my foremost wish was to have a big brother. These people are on my trail this time. Mama probably discussed with you the other incidents that occurred while I was in San Quentin. What do you think? I try to be a good boy and help other boys to be good, and this sort of thing is my reward. I get accused of everything that cannot be positively established elsewhere, but I mustn't complain too much. It isn't allowed. I know you have to work pretty hard and consequently haven't much time to yourself. But if you have any at all, I could use it. You did such a wonderful job with your own children. I'm thinking that you could probably help my mama's children. Me in particular. But more seriously, old friend, Mama told me of your concern. Thanks. We have plenty of support in this. Your youngest daughter, as you probably know, came to a couple of the appearances. I tried to contact her or establish her as a regular correspondent, but we got lost in a confusion of red tape. She is a lovely young woman. Give my regards. When were you last in Chicago? I have heard that the place we stayed in and all the surrounding neighborhood has been completely rebuilt. City-owned projects. They should have done that 50 years ago. I still dream about that place sometimes. Big brother chasing me in slow motion down alleys, over the roofs, busting their windows with my slingshot. Send me lots of brightly colored postcards and some pictures of the family. And if you get a few minutes, you can tell me of your impressions of this fierce world. Oh, if that little girl is still at home, I want you to try and fatten her up just a little. George. 1970. Angela. Note. Angela Y. Davis. End note. I am certain that they plan to hold me incommunicado. All of my letters, except for a few, to my immediate family have come back to me with silly comments on my choice of terms. The incoming mail is also sent back to the outside sender. The mail which I do receive is sometimes 1 or 2 weeks old. So, my sweet sister, when I reach you, it will be in this manner. I'm going to write on both sides of this paper, and when I make a mistake, I'll just scratch over it and continue on. That is my style, completely informal. Was that your sister with you in court? If so, she favored you, both very beautiful people. You should have introduced me. They are going to take your job. I know they are. Anything else would be expecting too much. They can't, however, stop you from teaching in public institutions, can they? They hate us, don't they? I like it that way. That is the way it's supposed to be. If they didn't hate me, I would be doing something very wrong, and then I would have to hate myself. I prefer it this way. I get little hate notes in the folds of my newspaper almost every day now. You know, the racist stuff, traditional dear nigger stuff, and how dead I am going to be one day. They think they're mad at me now, but it's nothing compared to how it will be when I really get mad myself. Pigs are punks, Angela. We made a terrible mistake in overestimating these people. It reflects on us badly that we have allowed them to do the things they have done to us. Since they are idiots, what does that make us? I just read Bobby Seale's account of that scene in Chicago, Ramparts, June 70. It started in San Francisco with the flight to evade charge. One of the pigs commented that this was so easy, but it shouldn't have been. Brothers like that are the best of us. It shouldn't have gone down like that. We should never make it easy for them by relaxing. At this stage of the educational process, examples are crucially important. Well, that's the name of the game right now. I have ideas, 10 years worth of them. I like all those brothers on 50th Street to be aware of them. Tell Faye Stender to give you a copy of my thoughts on Huey Newton and politics, and the end of these writings titled Letter to Huey Newton. There should be a note on revolutionary culture and the form it should take in the black American colonies. That was the best section. Without that section, the power would be lost. Faye and I don't agree altogether on political method, but that is only because we are viewing things from very different levels of slavery. Mine is an abject slavery. I think of you all the time. I've been thinking about women a lot lately. Is there anything sentimental or otherwise wrong with that? There couldn't be. It's never bothered me too much before, the sex thing. I would do my exercise and the hundreds of katas, stay busy with something. This 10 years really has gone pretty quickly. It has destroyed me as a person, a human being that is, but it was sudden. It was a sudden death. It seems like 10 days rather than 10 years. Would you like to know a subhuman? I certainly hope you have time. I'm not a very nice person. I'll confess out front. I've been forced to adopt a set of responses, reflexes, attitudes that have made me more kin to the cat than anything else, the big black one. For all of that, I am not a selfish person. I don't think so anyway. But I do have myself in mind when I talk about us relating. You would be the generous one. I am the recipient of the generosity. They're killing niggas again down the tier, all day, every day. They are killing niggas and, quote, them protesters, end quote, with small workings of mouth. One of them told the pig today that he was going to be awful disappointed with the pig if the pig didn't shoot some niggas or protesters this evening when he got off work. The pig found it very amusing. They went off on a 20-minute political discussion, Pig and his convict supporter. There is something very primitive about these people, something very fearful. In all the time I've been down here on Maximum Row, no brother has ever spoken to one of these people. We never speak about them, across the cells. Every brother down here is under the influence of the party line, and racist terms like honky have never been uttered. All of these are beautiful brothers, ones who have stepped across the line into the position from which there can be no retreat. All are fully committed. They are the most desperate and dauntless of our kind. I love them. They are men and they do not fight with their mouths. They've brought them here from prisons all over the state to be warehoused or murdered, whichever is more expedient. That brother Edwards, who was murdered in that week in January, told his lawyer that he would never get out of prison alive. He was, at the time of that statement, on Maximum Row, Death Row, Soledad, California. He was 21 years old. We have made it a point to never exchange words with these people, but they never relent. Angela, there are some people who will never learn new responses. They will carry out what they incorporated into their characters at early youth to the grave. Some can never be educated. As an historian, you know how long and how fervently we've appealed to these people to take some of the murder out of their system, their economics, their propaganda. And as an intelligent observer, you must see how our appeals were received. We've wasted many generations and oceans of blood trying to civilize these elements over here. It cannot be done in the manner we have attempted it in the past. Dialectics, understanding, love, passive resistance, they won't work on an activistic, maniacal, gory pig. It's going to grow much worse for the black male than it already is. Much, much worse. We are going to have to be the vanguard, the catalyst in any meaningful change. When generalizing about black women, I could never include you in any of it. That is not complimentary. But my mother at one time tried to make a coward of me. She did the same with John. She is changing fast under crisis situation and apocalyptic circumstance. John and Fleeta's mothers did the same to them, or I should say tried, and so did every brother's mother I've ever drawn out. I'm reasonably certain that I can draw from every black male in this country some comments to substantiate that his mother, the black female, attempted to aid his survival by discouraging his violence or by turning it inward. The blacks of Slave Society USA have always been a matriarchal sub-society. The implication is clear. Black mama is going to have to put a sword in that brother's hand and stop that be a good boy shit. Channel his spirit instead of break it, or help to break it, I should say. Do you understand? All of the sisters I've ever known personally and through other brothers' accounts begged and bullied us to look for jobs instead of being satisfied with the candy stick take. The strongest impetus a man will ever have in an individual sense will come from a woman he admires. When, quote, Soul, unquote, did that feature on you, I discussed you with some of the comrades. One of them asked me what my response would be if it were my job to guard your body for the party from the attack of 10 armed pigs. I told them my response would be to charge. There would be 11 people hurting, but you wouldn't be one of them. Everyone agreed it was the correct response. As an individual, I am grateful for you. As the black male, I hope that since your inclination is to teach, you will give serious consideration to redeeming this very next generation of black males by reaching for today's black female. I am not too certain about my generation. There are a few, and with these few we will keep something, but we have altogether too many pimps and punks and black capitalists who want a piece of the putrescent pie. There's no way to predict. Sometimes people change fast. I've seen it happen to brothers overnight, but then they have to learn a whole new set of responses and attack reflexes which can't be learned overnight. So cats like me, who have no tomorrows, have to provide examples. I have an ideal regarding tomorrow, but I live an hour at a time, right in the present, looking right over my nose for the trouble I know is coming. There is so much that could be done right now, but I won't talk about those things right here. I will say that it should never be easy for them to destroy us. If you start with Malcolm X and count all of the brothers who have died or been captured since, you will find that not even one of them was really prepared for a fight. No imagination or fighting style was evidenced in any one of the incidents, but each one that died professed to know the nature of our enemies. It should never be so easy for them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Edward V. Hanrahan, Illinois State Attorney General, sent 15 pigs to raid the Panther headquarters and murder Hampton and Clark. Do you have any idea what would have happened to those 15 pigs if they had run into as many Viet Cong as there were Panthers in that building? The VC are all little people with less general education than we have. The argument that they have been doing it longer has no validity at all, because they were doing it just as well when they started as they are now. It's very contradictory for a man to teach about the murder in corporate capitalism, to isolate and expose the murders behind it, to instruct that these madmen are completely without stops, are licentious, totally depraved, and then not make adequate preparations to defend himself from the madman's attack. Either they don't really believe their own spiel, or they harbor some sort of subconscious death wish. None of this should have happened as it did. I don't know if we'll learn in time or not. I am not well here. I pretend that all is well for the benefit of my family's peace of mind, but I'm going to cry to you so you can let the people of 50th Street know not to let this happen to them, and that they must resist that cat with all of their strength when he starts that jail talk. When the menu reads steak, we get a piece of rotten steer, I hope, the size of a quarter. When it reads cake, we get something like cornbread. Those are the best things served. When two guys fight, the darker guy will get shot. To supplement their incomes, the pigs will bring anything into the prison and sell it to the convict who smuggles money in from his visits. Now, black people don't visit their kin in the joint much, and those that do can't afford to give up any money, so we have less of everything that could make life more comfortable and safe. Weapons are brought in too. Pigs are fascists right out front. The white prisoner who is con-wise joins the Hitlerian party right here in the joint. He doesn't have to worry about the rules. He stays high. When he decides to attack us, he has the best weapons. Seldom will a pig give a con a gun, though. It has happened, however. in San Quentin 3 times to my knowledge, but they will provide cutlery and zip guns. The old convict code died years ago. These cons work right with the police against us. The only reason that I am still alive is because I take everything to the extreme, and they know it. I never let any of them get within arm's reach, and their hands must be in full view. When on the yard, I will stay close to something to get under. Nothing, absolutely nothing, comes as a surprise to me. There is much to be said about these places, but I must let this go right now, or I won't be able to post it until tomorrow. In the event that you missed it, my writing is terrible, I know. I think a great deal of you. This is one slave that knows how to love. It comes natural and runs deep. Accepting it will never hurt you. Free, open, honest love. That's me. Should you run into Yvonne, note, Yvonne is Angela Davis's middle name. End note. Tell her that I love her also, and equally. Tell her that I want to see her, up close. Tell her I'm not a possessive cat, never demanding, always cool. Never get upset until our face and freedom get involved, but make her understand that I want to hold her, chains and all, and run my tongue in that little gap between her 2 front teeth. That should make her smile. Power to the people. George. May 21st, 1970. Dear Angela, I think about you all of the time. I like thinking about you. It gives me occasion for some of the first few really deeply felt ear-to-ear grins. And I've had to increase the number of my daily push-ups by half. That will make me stronger. The contact has been good for me in 100 ways. But then my thoughts return to your enemies. They are mine too, of course, but thinking of them as your enemies cause of the monster in me, the dark, terrible things that I keep hidden in the pit, fanged, clawed, armored. They are more awful by far when you become involved. I've been finding and developing these things for many years now. As soon as you isolate, identify and number your enemies, I'll set these things loose on them. And you won't be disappointed this time, I promise, sweet sister. This time nothing will be held back. Your enemies will be made humbler and wiser men. John is a young brother, and he is just a little withdrawn, but he is intelligent and loyal. He is at that dangerous age where confusion sets in and sends brothers either to the undertaker or to prison. He is a little better off than I was, and than most brothers his age. He learns fast and can distinguish the real from the apparent, provided someone takes the time to present it. Tell the brothers never to mention his green eyes and skin tone. He is very sensitive about it, and he will either fight or withdraw. Do you understand? You know that some of us don't bother to be righteous with each other. He has had a great deal of trouble these last few years behind that issue. It isn't right. He is a loyal and beautiful black man-child. I love him. This shit is starting to thicken. 6 in Georgia, 2 in Jackson. Hard hats, counter demonstrations, much like Germany in the 30s. That thing in Georgia and the one in Jackson were like turkey shoots. We die altogether too easy. Each one of those brothers has fathers, blood brothers, sisters, and mamas. But it's safe to assume that no positive response will be made, no eye for eye reprisal. Something very wrong has swept over us. We've grown so accustomed to seeing murder done to us that no one takes it seriously anymore. We've grown numb, immune to the pain. Charles Evers and the entire world knows who killed Medgar Evers. The murderer is still walking the streets. Perhaps I shouldn't even recognize people like Whitney Young except as enemies. but the shit that they sling around does fall on some of us and consequently must be counterpoised. He has now gone on record as thinking that we, quote, should arm ourselves, but strictly for defense only, end quote. But then he goes on to contradict himself by commenting that if we used arms it would be like suicide. His words, quote, a beer can against a tank, end quote. Well, how does one defend himself from an attacker without some point launching a counterattack, especially when guns are the choice of weapons? There is an element of cowardice, great ignorance, and perhaps even treachery in blacks of his general type. And I agree with Eldridge and Malcolm. We are not protecting unity when we refrain from attacking them. Actually, it's the reverse that's true. We can never have unity as long as we have these idiots among us to confuse and frighten the people. It's not possible for anyone to still think that Western mechanized warfare is absolute, not after the experiences of the Third World since World War II. The French had tanks in Algeria. The U.S. had them in Cuba. Everything, I mean every trick and gadget in the manual of Western arms has been thrown at the VC, and they have thrown them back, twisted and ruined. And they have written books and pamphlets telling us how we could do the same. It's obvious that fighting ultimately depends upon men, not gadgets. So I must conclude that those who stand between us and the pigs who protect the marketplace are either cowards or traitors, probably both. One way of indirectly detecting the traitor is to draw him out regarding our enemies' enemies. Young and all the rest of those running dogs attack the white left. Young attacked the Chicago 7 and the other whites of the left who want to help us destroy fascism. So did Leroy Jones on national TV in the company of Anthony Imperiali, a white racist KKKer, and a lot of high police officials. So what's happening with a guy who says he is for us but not against the government? Or one who says he's for us and against all whites except the ones who may kick his ass? There is a great deal of cowardice and treachery and confusion here. The black bourgeoisie, pseudo-bourgeoisie, the right reverends, the militant opportunists have left us in a quandary, rendered us impotent. How ridiculous we must seem to the rest of the black world when we beg the government to investigate their own protective agencies. Aren't the wild hip-shooting pigs loose among us to protect the property rights of the people who form the government? I've been sitting in here 10 years watching that kind of shit go down. It's always the same blacks. I am sure that it's intentional. They're not with us, you understand? Experience, trial and error would have changed them if they were. Who is the black working for? Who does he love when he screams, honky? He would throw us into a fight where we would be outnumbered 1 to 14, counting the blacks who would fight with for the other side in a race war. War on the honky is just another mystification, if not an outright move by the fascists. I don't know. I don't pretend to clairvoyance. I can't read all thoughts. And I do know some whites that I wouldn't count as enemies. But if all whites were my enemies, would it make sense for me to fight them all at the same time? The blanket indictment of the white race has done nothing but perplex us, inhibit us. The theory that all whites are the immediate enemy and all blacks are brothers, making them loyal, is silly and indicative of a lazy mind, to be generous, since it could be a fascist plot. It doesn't explain the black pig. There were 6 on the Hampton Clark kill. It doesn't explain the black paratroopers, just more pigs, who put down the great Detroit riot. And it doesn't explain the pseudo-bourgeois who can be found almost everywhere in the halls of government working for white supremacy, fascism, and capitalism. It leaves the average brother confused. In Detroit, they just didn't know what to do when they encountered the black paratroopers. They were so stunned when they saw those black fools shooting at them that they probably never will listen to another black voice regardless of what it's saying. If I were at large and wanted to help revolutionize the black community so that in a short time it would be made ready to take up the vanguard in an anti-establishment war, I would start like this. 1. Lay my hands on some money any way I could. 2. Quietly, without even a hint of political flavoring, I would have my fronts open as many skeet, trap, rifle, and pistol ranges as I could rent space for and around the black community. I would operate these places at cost and advertise. 3. Next door to these places, figurative, I would quietly, without political flavoring, open schools that deal with the close order combat arts, ostensibly as a community project to keep the children off the streets. The real intent, of course, is to instill the attack as defense idea that we lost somewhere along the line. 4. Apart from the 2 business ventures just mentioned, I will provide myself with printing or copying machines and make the salient points of urban guerrilla warfare, anti-tank warfare, and revolutionary culture as easy to get as close to hand as a glass of water. Now that just mentioned activity would be aside from the hard and seriously needed revolutionary work discussed early this morning, and the stuff you will find in the writings I mentioned in my last letter. One doesn't wait for all conditions to be right to start the revolution. The forces of the revolution itself will make the conditions right. Che said something like this: "Write me and let me have it straight. Power to the people. I love you, little sister. George." George. Friday, May 22nd, 1970. Dear Joan, they approved us for both correspondence and visits. Something really bad must be about to come down on me. This is the first time in a long train of efforts that I actually received my issue. It's good, and I want to hear from you whenever you get time. Did you get that thing from John Thorne? When I'm not working on my defense, I like to be doing something like this. Ideals and ideas grow and become more definite when one attempts to explain them to others who will try to understand. You know that my family has never understood me very well before. They are trying to now, but for years I had no line at all to the outside prison. It was almost like being held incommunicado. Incommunicado, it's almost destroyed me. So I thank you, madam. None of us could have made it this far without folks like yourself. We would be hunting each other over the ruins. Will you tell me all that you have experienced in these years of our separation? It will help me to answer some of the questions my mind has posed to itself recently. Everything, events, and how they impressed you. We don't have to worry about the censor in my record. They already are informed that I am a dirty, real dirty red, and they have already made their plans to stone me. I will stop them, of course, but at this level of the fight there is almost nothing for you to say that would compromise me any more than I already am. Then, too, they can kill me once more only. We cats live 9 times. I've started on my 9th. And since they seem determined to take this last little bit from me, I have nothing to lose. so we can bring it right down front. I will anyway. Dialectical materialism is my bag. I identify with anyone who hates just one fascist. I don't want a piece of the pie. I don't want all of it even. I think it's rotten. Should be discarded. We should start all over again. This new start should be made without individualism. Read isolation. Mysticism. Read religion. With a modification of the language for the purpose of removing the concept of possession. Read capitalism. Without the hard head mentality. Read William F. Buckley, Playboy, Central Intelligence Agency. The Buckleys, Babbitts, the snobs who are thoroughly convinced of their ability to bluff it through, I'll have to pull their arms off and hope that without their negative influence you will be able to educate the rest. Note that I didn't say re-educate. Power to the people. Love from your friend George. May 25th, 1970. Dear Joan, I have both of your letters right here. I got them about 10 minutes ago. One was dated by you May 20th, the other May 22nd. It is very nice, this is understating it, to see a new hand in here, Joan. Yours is a very beautiful hand, and I am gratified, another understatement, that it would bridge the things that separate us and hold me tenderly. It's the best proof that I can ever have, all that I'll need, to assure me that I am still alive and have lived well. Love's labor. I understand these things much better than most, always have, but I never could present it in the proper light before. Presentation was the problem. People kept mistaking it for animality or criminality, and then, less sensibly still, un-American. With you, whom I have always thought so much in agreement, I can't fail this time. There is a great deal to be exchanged between us. There is so much that I really need to know. Things that will help me do the theoretical work for a treatise in which I intend to prove that if there is still basis for a belief in the brotherhood of man, it must be discovered in this struggle for control of this country's direction. Since I've been an adult, mentally, I've never had the opportunity to question a mature, intelligent, and, most important, objective person of your particular distinctness, class, race, and sex. When I can do so without compromising each of us, I will pose some very sensitive, exploring queries. On these things, I will first want the detached, statistical evidence, and then what you feel to be so. If I overload you, well, it's just my style. I encircle and pull. It means simply that I think a great deal of you, and I am in such a hurry. Give John T. the pocketbook edition of A Dying Colonialism, The Wretched of the Earth, Black Face, White Mask, Malcolm's autobiography, the other was borrowed, and Malcolm Speaks. Also, if they can be found in pocketbook form, African Genesis and the Territorial Imperative by Robert Ardrey. Do you know who Leakey is? The anthropologist? I need him and Ruth Benedict too. She wrote, among other things, Racist. She was a very wonderful woman, much like yourself in many ways. You can and must send photographs of the family, yourself and friends. They took all that I had when they started this stuff in January. All my books, everything. We'll have to test them on the clippings. If not, just give them to John T. My friend, anything that you feel that I need to know, send it. Say it, by all means. You have in me a receptive, completely liberated mind. Love and light. George. May 26th, 1970. Dear Joan, I have your message of the 25th already. Things have improved in this respect. You are quite an experience for me also. A very new thing altogether. I would say fresh. How do you state newness? I can only understate it again. Pleasure? To express it, I'll confess that with these 3 messages, delicate intrusions on my sobriety, you have redefined all of those care elements. It has been a long time since I've heard anything whispered. The banshee drowned such things out. It has started to dim. You have a very fortunate boss. I'm sure he must understand how rarely those kind of contacts. Too cold. How about contract or covenant? Perhaps bond. Yes, a bond. I'm sure he appreciates how uncommon they are. I've changed my mind. When I need statistics, I'll address myself to Liz. Don't be shy. The years of our separation mean nothing to me. I remain as I was. Arms are somewhat longer, and we should have a division of labor according to character and disposition. Some passion, certainly in order. Will you excuse me when these letters appear a little informal? The scratching in and out. It doesn't mean that I am lazy. It's an effect of my haste. I'm in a great race against time. Justifiable homicide. But let's discuss the division of labor. It's essential to competent organisms. We are in step with each other. Hearts and heads, nervous equipment, arms, hands, extensions of the hand, sword and pen. Passion. I'm sure that you know they must all function according to ability in perfect harmony. The organism can't survive in good health and grow without all of its related parts. There are no principal parts. You conceded that with the, quote, all or none, end quote. It means that the small toe is as important to the human organism as the heart. It must be that way. The small toe is essential to balance, and its loss could precede or, let's say, presage the loss of the foot. Without footing, the movements of the head and heart become less efficient. The remainder of the organism could survive without the arm, but it should never be surrendered without making the strongest possible protest. I won't stand for any loss at all. The instant that my toe is taken, I will lose my head. We must move along 2 lines in concert: instruction of the unrighteous and destruction of the unrighteous. Within the structure of these 2, and structure is an imperative, components, there is a situation for every redefinement of character. Passion is at the heart of instruction. I just got a copy of Malcolm Speaks from Faye, so you can take that off your list, but send, through John, Malcolm's autobiography. Need it for my legal work. I haven't changed. I still adore you. George. May 28th, 1970. Dear Angela, I sincerely hope you understand this situation here with me. The overall thing I mean. You probably do. I don't want to be bashed with you. The relative levels of our insecurity are too disparate for me to dwell on feelings. The warm, very personal, elemental thing. I can never express it in this form anyway, but I want you to know, and then we can get on with the work. I have, like most people, a recurring dream. In this dream there is a great deal of abstract activity. Have you ever seen the pig they have named blank? General something or other blank? I don't know why my mind locked on him, but part of this dream is still a shot of me trying to fit a large steel boomerang into his mouth. It switches then to a scene where me and 2 other brothers, T.G. and a brother named H.B., are holding hands to form a large circle in the ring. Inside the ring formed by the 3 of us is this guy. He's wearing top hat and tails, stars and stripes, beard and bushy eyebrows. The action part goes like this. Old Sam tries to break out of the circle. We stop him. After about 10 tries, we're wearing track shoes. He's ragged as an old moped. It goes on that way, scenes running into each other, overlapping, all very pleasing. Wish fulfillment? Very gratifying stuff, but the high point, the climax, well, a tall, slim African woman, firelight, and the beautiful dance of death. The wonderful woman didn't become part of my dream until last year sometime. I never thought this kind of environment could produce one like her, but at the same time I knew that things never could be good with me without her. But I promised not to be bashed with you. It's crazy. All women, even the very phenomenal, want at least a promise of brighter days, bright tomorrows. I have no tomorrows at all. The worst thing that could have ever happened to the woman in the dream was letting me touch her. I'll tell you the whole thing if we can ever find somewhere to relax. Until then, I promise not to bore you. You probably hear these devotions all day, and with your incentive factors, they're probably all sincere devotions. Let me heap mine on you with these pitiful little strokes of the pen. For the last time, unless seized by ungovernable impulse, with a statement made at the risk of seeming immodest. But I am modest, and I hope that it is righteous for me to feel that no one, and much more meaningful, no black, wherever the hurricane has washed up his broken body, no one at all can love like I. In our last communication, I made a statement about women and their part in revolutionary culture, People's War. It wasn't a clear statement. I meant to return to it, but was diverted. I understand exactly what the woman's role should be, the very same as the man's. Intellectually, there is very little difference between male and female. The differences we see in bourgeois society are all conditioned and artificial. I was leading up to the obvious fact that black women in this country are far more aggressive than black males. But this is qualified by the fact that their aggression has, until very recently, been within the system. That get a diploma boy stuff or earn you some money, where it should have been the gun. Development of the ability for serious fighting and organized violence was surely not encouraged in the black female, but neither was it discouraged, as it was in the case of the black male. Please don't dismiss this yet. Let me rush to remind you that we have already established that bourgeois society has relegated women in general to a very distinct level of existence, even the slave women. I'm not about to say they loved you better. Love doesn't even enter this equation, but socially primitive bourgeois thinking and the sex mystique does. First, a woman wasn't considered dangerous. Second, the most important experience in American white males coming into manhood was entering the body of the black female. These two circumstances contributed to the longevity and the matriarchal status of black women greatly. Add to all of this the fact that the black mother wanted to see her son survive in a grim and murderous white male society, and the grotesque, misshapen pieces come together. I was saying that if the black mother wants her revenge, she will have to stop teaching her sons to fear death. By default, she dominates the black subculture, and her son must be the catalyst in any great changes that go down in this country. The head and the fist. No one else has as much to gain. Power to the people. George. May 29th, 1970. Dearest Angela, I'm thinking about you. I've done nothing else all day. This photograph that I have of you is not adequate. Do you recall what Eldridge said regarding pictures for the cell? Give Francis several color enlargements for me. This is the cruelest aspect of the prison experience. You can never understand how much I hate them for this. No one could. I haven't been able to gauge it myself. Over this 10 years, I've never left my cell in the morning looking for trouble. Never once have I initiated any violence. In each case where it was alleged, it was defense attack response to some aggression, verbal or physical. Perhaps a psychiatrist, a Western psychiatrist that is, could make a case against me for anticipating attacks. But I wasn't born this way. Perhaps this same psychiatrist would diagnose from the overreactions that I am not a very nice person. But again, I refer you to the fact that I was born innocent and trusting. The instinct to survive and all that springs from it developed in me as it is today out of necessity. I am not a very nice person, I confess. I don't believe in such things as free speech when it's used to rob and defame me. I don't believe in mercy or forgiveness or restraint. I've gone to great lengths to learn every dirty trick devised and have improvised some new ones of my own. I don't play fair, don't fight fair. As I think of this present situation, the things that happen all day, the case they've saddled me with in retrospection of the aggregate injury, all now drawn against the background of this picture you've given me. No one will profit from this, sister. No one will ever again profit from our pain. This is the last treadmill I'll run. They've created this situation. All that flows from it is their responsibility. They created in me one irate, resentful nigger. And it's building to what climax? The nation's undertakers have grown wealthy on black examples. But I want you to believe in me, Angela. I'm going to make a very poor example. No one will profit from my immolation. When that day comes, they'll have to bury 10,000 of their own with full military honors. They'll have earned it. Do you sense how drunk this photograph has made me? You got it all, African woman. I'm very pleased. If you don't ask me for my left arm, my right eye, both eyes, I'll be very disappointed. You're the most powerful stimulus I could have. From now on, when you have books for me to read in preparing my motions and jury selection questions, send them through John Thorne, people's lawyer. He is less pressed. And I do want Lenin, Marx, Mao, Che, Giap, Uncle Ho, and Nkrumah, and any black Marxist. Mama has a list. Tell Robert to provide money for them, and always look for the pocket editions, all right? My father, you'll have to try to understand him. He'll be with me in the last days in spite of whatever he says and thinks now. I've told him that I love you, and I told him that if he respects me at all and wants me to spare his neck at Armageddon, he must be kind to you. I got a letter from him this evening wherein he called the pigs by their very accurate moniker, pigs. He'll be all right. I see your influence already. But back to the books. With each load of heavy stuff, throw in a reference book dealing with pure fact, figures, statistics, graphs for my further education. Also books on the personnel and structure of today's political, military, and economic front. I am doing some serious theory work for you concerning the case dedicated to Huey and Angela. If you understand what I want, let me know. Sister, it's been like being held incommunicado these last 10 years. No one understood what I was attempting to do and to say. We belong among the righteous of the world. We are the most powerful. We are in the best position to do the people's work. To win will involve taking a chance, crawling on the belly, naming, numbering, infiltrating, giving up meaningless small comforts, readjusting some values. My life means absolutely nothing without positive control over the factors that determine its quality. If you understand, rush to send all that I've asked for. A load should come in each day. I've read it all, once anyway, but I need it now. And time has become very important. I want you to believe in me. I love you like a man, like a brother, and like a father. Every time I've opened my mouth, assumed my battle stance, I was trying in effect to say, I love you, African woman. My protest has been a small one. Something much more effective is hidden in my mind. Believe in me, Angela. This is one nigger who's got some sense and is not afraid to use it. If my enemies, your enemies, prove stronger, at least I want them to know that they made one righteous African man extremely angry, and that they've strained the patience of a righteous and loving people to the utmost. I've stopped several times in this writing to exercise, to eat, and it has grown late. I want to get this off tonight. I must know as soon as you get this and the others. Are you sure about your mail? I can imagine that the CIA is reading all your mail before you get it and deciding what you should and shouldn't have. Big brother. He is rather transparent. I don't care about him. I have his number. I know he's a punk. He can't stop me. Should we make a lover's vow? It's silly, with all my tomorrows accounted for, but you can humor me. Power to the people. George. Saturday, May 30th, 1970. Dear Joan, it is early Saturday morning as I write this. I'm using the night light in front of my cell. This is a rare night, a departure from the ordinary. It's quiet. It occurs to me that you are probably asleep, but then you may not be. My family was in the area today, and I know how disruptive that experience can be. I just lit my 75th cigarette of this day. It will be my last until after breakfast. I was, before I started this letter, thinking of all the wonderful women in my life, and decided that you should hear from me. I'm doing as I've always done. Wish for 5, expect 3, and get nothing. I'm a little fat, perhaps, but I don't know how I manage that. I eat nothing, for fear of poison. I seldom sleep, and do at least 5 full hours of martial-type exercises, with plenty of smoke breaks. At the same time, we discover and reach for each other this opposite factor, within sometimes, just beneath conscious level, let's hope, is working against us. But love is the stronger force. If we just let it hang out unbridled. If it's soft and warm, hug it hard. Look for the common features. F. Individualism. From Dachau, with love, George. June 2nd, 1970. Dearest Angela, first among the equals. This is the 4th attempt to reach you. The others were on paper like this. They all said, I love you, African woman. Little else. I will continue to try to reach you in this and any other existence that follows. They can't control this. Once we have some lines of communication established, I'll set down some of my thoughts. But we must hurry. So let me know through someone when I have reached you. The dates will tell you which letters have gotten through, or at least they will tell me. I sent a list of stuff that I needed in that line. If you don't get it, use George's list, excepting the Fanon and Ardrey, which I have coming from another quarter. Need reference books too on everything. I've asked my father to provide you with the money for this stuff. He will cooperate with you, but remember, we want the pocket editions of everything. These pigs like to steal. If I lose something, it's best if it's only something small. You haven't much time for writing. This is understandable, but always confirm any letters you receive. I worry, and for good reason. There is a great deal of bullshit between us, concrete and steel, fear, and barbed wire. It will not be that way for long. The pig is a dying breed. He is finding it hard to bluff people these days. If you really need me, I'll rush to your side right now, through steel, concrete, all that sort of stuff. They are inert, dead, lacking will and intelligence. Our enemies, from the pig right on up to the who's who level, are idiots. Why do we tolerate them? They're not even really bad, because they lack the strength which originates in the mind. We've been too merciful, too forgiving, too understanding, but those days are gone forever. I've heard the term nigger 350 times today, just a word, but I don't understand. All of the cons who use it are little young punk types. At least 3 are outright homosexuals. They're afraid, and it's fear that's impelling them. They know that they are so far gone that they have nothing else to lose. They've talked away their lives already. I guess it's the same way with the pig and the men who make pigs. They know they've gone too far, that forgiveness is impossible. They cannot be reasonable now because of yesterday's excesses. It's pretty clear, isn't it, what is coming? I accept it. It's beautiful. Tomorrow. I like the way you do things. I like everything about you. Love you. George. June 2nd, 1970. Dear Joan, I don't know what to say regarding these people. Well, I won't say it now. I can't. They would simply return this letter. They sent me a notice saying that you were approved, and how else could you be getting these letters? Whoever you talked to on the phone was using an arbitrary, bad faith delaying tactic. I got the book all right, Joan. The long, mellow communication with the photos arrived, say 10 minutes ago. Translation unnecessary, thanks. I agree with you and Lao Tzu and Mao, who I think acknowledged him somewhere, but I agree with you about feelings and syntax. I must. Look at me. My father has tried for years to get me interested in writing fiction stuff. I've tried to explain that I was too busy living, and you know where I've been these years. However, we can connect the two, feeling and writing. Just drop the syntax. I don't consider myself a writer, an intellectual, really none of the things that can be isolated. When I feel, I'll write or talk in an effort to affect and affect, and sometimes on the safety valve principle, but actually I don't prefer anything as mild as pen and paper. In my fancies I see myself growing up to be a VC type, a Che type cat with all 4 paws on the ground, a clear line drawn, a kiss for some, the claw for the malicious. I'm a very simple person at heart. Perfect love, perfect hate. That's the insides of me. It means that I've divided the world's people into 2 categories only. I reject further classification on the grounds that I will not be confused, manipulated, divided to be conquered. I recognize 2 distinct types only, the innocent, the guilty. The innocents, even the ones that I'll meet tomorrow, I love them all equally. I'll be serious with you, Joan. I find it almost impossible to think in terms of digging some more. Do you understand? Think of who you love most, Dan or Liz. Do you dig it? If told or made to choose which one of my parents should be allowed to live, how could I choose either? I'd have to give myself. Follow this line by putting your son against my brother. I would give myself. I will give myself. The guilty, I will give the folding crane's wing snap to the temple. Simple. I saw your mark in the book. I love you for several very sound reasons. Feelings, mainly for understanding. Ironic that we couldn't have lived this several years ago. I'll attack Audrey, of course. He is a nationalist, capitalist, dilettante. Just wanted the book so I could do it accurately. From that child, with D's feelings. George. June 3rd, 1970. Dear Joan, I have your message of June 2nd already, and it feels nice to be worried about, I confess. But you can't be my mama. I feel a lot older than Dan. How old is he? In years. You and yours truly will have to be sister and brother, I insist. I do all right. I never have been a guy who ate much. I know you understand why. They allow us to spend money once a week. I stock up then. My father has provided me with all the money they'll let me spend in the next 6 months. I'm not really hurting. I still think of myself as a black and an African, but I can't be satisfied with myself until I am communist, man, revolutionary man, and this without feeling that I've denied myself or failed to identify. Your descriptions of places, things, people leave nothing to be desired. I was standing right there, over you, with you, on the beach. Life could be if, a wonderful experience. I have very mixed feelings about this whole affair of drawing in and forcing out air. When I think of the very lovely people, the innocent, when I read your descriptions and some others, my mind strays momentarily from the fact that I'll never be safe. At these moments I feel a thrill of promise, but that's only for a moment. The rest of my day is elevated to a pledge I made to myself, a compact that I would never live at ease as long as there was or is one man who would restrict my and your self-determination. Must go. Last chance to post this. Tomorrow. From a guy who really digs you. George. June 4th, 1970. Dearest Angela, this is the 5th, one of these, on legal paper. I hope one reaches you soon. Very discouraging, but I'll never stop trying. All of these brothers here with me love you. In fact, every black I've talked with who had an opinion at all concerning you agrees with me about you. One thing about this bothers me a great deal. Do you know? Of course you do. The secret police, CIA, etc. go to great lengths to murder and consequently silence every effective black person the moment he attempts to explain to the ghetto that our problems are historically and strategically tied to the problems of all colonial people. This means that they are watching you closely. I worry. If something happened to you, I just wouldn't understand. It's no coincidence that Malcolm X and ML King died when they did. Malcolm X had just put it together, 2 and 2. I seriously believe King knew all along but was holding out and presenting the truth in such a way that it would affect the most people situationally without getting them damaged by gunfire. You remember what was on his lips when he died. Vietnam and economics, political economy. The professional killers could have murdered him long before they did. They let Malcolm rage on Muslim nationalism for a number of years because they knew it was an empty ideal. But the second he got his feet on the ground, they murdered him. We die too easily. We forgive and forget too easily. Gentle and refined people, aren't we? We'll make good communists if someone deals with the fascists for us. That was a little bitter. Pay no attention to stuff like that. I have more faith in our resilience than is healthy for me. If what I said about ML King is true, and I'm going to put it down as if I were positive that it is, he was really on our side. The billions are righteous, and his image can be used. I mean, we can just claim him and use his last statements and his image to strengthen ours. And Malcolm can also be, quote unquote, reformed. I'm working this into my thing right now. I can use anything you have or can get that contains King's public statements or comments to notable people. I'll be easy with it, slip it in. Like it was just common knowledge that King was a Maoist. I sure hope you understand, sister, and hurry. This hour hand is sweeping like the second hand. I don't care. My credo is to seize the pig by the tusk and ride him till his neck breaks. If fortuitous outcome of circumstances allow him to prevail over me again, then I want to have this carefully worked up comment prepared. I want something to remain, to torment his ass, to haunt him, to make him know in no uncertain terms that he did incur this nigger's sore disfavor. I need some facts and figures to dress this passion. Insist where you have to, but get them to cooperate. And I have only my memory now. I keep good pictures in my head. My memory is close to being photographic, but not quite. The lights went out an hour, perhaps an hour and a half ago. It's 12:45 a.m., June 5th. And I love you twice as much as I did yesterday. It redoubles and double redoubles. I'm using the night light in front of my cell to write this. You may never read it. I make this covenant with myself. I'll never again relax. I'll never make peace with this world as long as the enemies of self-determination have the running of things. You may never read this, and I may never touch you, but I feel better than I have for many seasons. You do know that I live, and I hope that by some means you have discovered that I love you deeply, and would touch you tenderly, warmly, fiercely if I could, if my enemies were not at present stronger. I'm going to stop here and do something physical. Push-ups, finger stands, something quiet and strenuous. Love you, woman. George. June 7th, 1970. Dear Joan, it's early Sunday morning, 4:05 a.m. These are my favorite hours. It's when I think of my favorite people. This is the only time that it will sometimes settle down here. Bet you're asleep this time. This is my third day up. I slept for about half an hour yesterday when I fell off at my improvised combination desk easy chair. The uniforms probably have put me down as insane. They've started to look at me that way. You probably don't know what I'm referring to, however. There's a special air, an expression reserved for those crazy end blanks. A nuance different from the normal disdain. I try not to let them see me in my kata. Note, martial exercises mentioned in an earlier letter. End note. But they are rather sneaky and they catch me sometimes. I guess it does look strange. A dance without music. Last week, when I mentioned that I felt older than I am, I wasn't referring to my knees or elbows, back or hands, nor did I mean that I felt in any way wise. I feel old, Joan, in the sense that a paper target is old after about half an hour on the police academy practice range. Used. Whatever it was that I lost these last 10 years, I lost it suddenly. I can hardly imagine time passing any faster. The same can be said for the years before prison also. I picked up my first 2 bullet holes at age 15. but the prison experience was unique, or I should say is unique in that there can be absolutely no emoluments for accepting the risk and responsibilities for hanging on. I haven't seen the night sky for a decade. During the early 60s in San Quentin, lockup meant just that. 24 hours a day, all day, a shower once a week, and this could last for months. It's not changed much. On a shower walk one day in 63, a brother called me to his cell for an opinion on this work he was doing on his walls. He had drawn in the night sky with colored pencils, and against it, life-size, lifelike, he was good, female comrades, some with fluffy naturals like my sister Angie, some with silky naturals like my sister Betsy. He had worked on it for 3 months. It was enormous, beautiful, precise, mellow. When he finished the last strokes, the pigs moved him to another cell and painted over it, gave him a bad conduct report, and made him pay for the new coat of paint. That brother didn't draw much anymore last time I saw him. Some political cartoons, abstracts, and book margins. Life's a tale told by an idiot. Have you read any Shakespeare? I really enjoyed him when I was young. Macbeth is timeless. Put him in a Brooks Brothers or a uniform, and he'd fit right into the 70s. But you read all that stuff when you were in high school. I kept forgetting your background. Class, forgive me, sister. Forgive the parochialism I sometimes slip into. Habits formed in being and addressing myself to the hindmost. From Thy Child, with love, George. June 7th, 1970. Dear John. Note, John Thorne, one of the author's lawyers. End note. You and your secretary just left. It's Sunday. I hope that ham on the tape was satisfactory. Note, a statement which the author recorded for a meeting of the Soledad Brothers Defense Committee. End note. I find that sort of thing hard. I'll have to deal with it. I can, I guess, but it's not in keeping with my character. I'm the original shy guy, no ego at all. It's been crushed. I'd feel more relaxed at a shooting scrap than talking at the head of the table. Just not the kind of thing I favor. But if you feel that it may be necessary in the future, I'll work on it. But you're going to have to convince me. I've always thought in terms of division of labor. John, Huey, Angela Davis, etc. on the political front. Cats like me behind them, in the crowd, watching the watchers, neutralizing the watchers. Where I have the nervous equipment naturally for that. The addressing would be strained. You understand the difference between Fidel and Che. Fidel is at home behind a bank of microphones. Che is at home behind the carbine. Both can switch roles temporarily, but Che is really a man of few words. And where would the Cuban Revolution have ended were it not for Che and Camilo Cienfuegos? But I'll try. It's merely a question of security, inner confidence, you understand? Will these people want to hear and bother to understand what I'm saying? I feel a little funny about Angela being fired at this time, and for that reason. We've fronted them off so often over these last few hundred years. I know they would have fired her anyway, but I still feel dependent in a way that damages my ego further. I hope like hell I'll have the opportunity to live up to expectations. She is such an incentive factor. How can I fear otherwise? Thanks. Power to the people. George. June 11th, 1970. Dear Joan, nice, very nice surprise for me today. But have you ever experienced a faster half hour? I did have some word from my family, but we got so wrapped up that I forgot. As you were being pulled away, I thought they would dislocate your arm. I was reflecting on how nice it is to hug. Tell Georgia my case requires her to see me at least once a week. I want to see her now. She may come up tomorrow, but if so, I imagine you'll know. Adore you, George. June 14th, 1970. Dear G, the California Adult Authority Board and inmate Jackson, A63837, clashed for the final time in June 1969. When I was called up in June 1970, the usual arrangement is once a year, I refused to go. I was already under indictment for the murder of the pig, and it wasn't very likely that I would be given consideration for anything but the firing squad. The June 1969 appearance, however, was very significant because it followed a 6-month postponement. I had gone to the board for the 8th time in December 1968. I was told by the institution employee who always sits on the board hearings that I was, quote, granted a parole, end quote. I would be back on the street on March 4th. I walked back to my cell telling everyone I had a date. I even wrote to my family. 3 days later, I was informed that a mistake had been made. Consideration of my case was postponed for 6 months. They explained to me that I would be transferred to Soledad from San Quentin. If I did well for 6 months at Soledad, I would be given parole for certain. When the June 1969 appearance finally took place, different people were on the board panel. No one could find any reference to the promises made to me by the earlier board. I was denied for another full year. Something very similar had happened the year before at the December 1967 appearance. At the previous meeting, they had promised me that if I had 7 or 8 clean months, I would be released. When I reminded them of their promise, they laughed and stated that, quote, we never make deals like that, end quote. All the other board appearances were tense affairs conducted in an atmosphere of mutual hostility. We argued over conflicting interpretations of the disciplinary reports in my central file. I had been accused of being a Muslim, communist, agitator, nationalist, loan shark, thief, assassin, and saboteur. Nothing was ever settled. Nothing was really exchanged except hostility. Power to the people. Comrade George. June 15th, 1970. Dear Joan, I missed a day or two. I will clean up for that soon. I've been extremely busy in here, and then sometimes I get lazy. Then I'll kick back and think about you all. Since you are my eyes and ears and interpreter, I find myself with you most of the time. I also miss seeing you today during what may have been the best court session to date. We won one. Note, the court in Salinas granted a change of venue to San Francisco. And note, the people on the march. I've lost so many rounds, Joan. It feels good. We love you. You know where I'm at. I've always loved you. But all the rest of these cats down here are starting to feel your presence also. I have Marie in here now. Note, someone sent me a card with a picture of the African mother, done by and named Marie. I was commenting that I and my black male comrades had failed to be fathers and husbands over the decades. End note. Marie was my first love, my first experience. It was tender. I failed her. But if I try real hard now, she may forgive me. That's been my thing for years, to always live up to expectations. And if you don't ask me for something very difficult, very taxing, I won't be able to relax from this point on. We won't have to worry about these here too much longer. How far is San Jose from San Francisco? Hope they let me see you, and perhaps they'll relent and let me see your daughter also. But there isn't much chance of that. What, in your opinion, was the principal reason for granting the move? Your opinion helps me anticipate. You understand, that's what kept me here among the living with you over these years. Anticipating. Adore you, George. June 17th, 1970. Dear Joan, I may have read a review or quote from Levi Strauss, but that's about all. And the world? I love it. Send it to me. I'll share it with all the rest here who can still love. But we'll have to transfer it soon. The day I'll leave, I'll send you a line or two. You let them know. Western culture developed out of a very hostile environment. Rocks, snow, ice, long periods when the ground was too hard to be worked, when nothing could be produced from the soil. Hunting became too important. Accumulating, hoarding, hiding, protecting enough to last through winter, things falling apart in winter, covetous glances at one's neighbor's good. Would 300 or 400 years of that kind of survival influence the culture? Would greed color itself into the total result in a large way? Hunt, forage, store, hoard, hide, defend, the thing at stake? Not very conducive to sensitivity and tenderness. Change the environment, change the man. Simple. Consider the people's store. After full automation, the implementation of the theory of economic advantage. You dig. No waste makers. No harnesses on production. There is no intermediary, no money. The store, it stocks everything that the body or home could possibly use. Why won't the people hoard? How is an operation like that possible? How could the storing place keep its stores if its stock, merchandise, is free? Men hoard against want, need, don't they? Aren't they taught that tomorrow holds terror? Pile up a surplus against this terror. Be greedy and possessive if you want to succeed in this insecure world. Nuts hidden away for tomorrow's winter. Change the environment, educate the man, he'll change. The people's store will work as long as people know that it will be there and have in abundance the things they need and want, really want. When they are positive that the common effort has and will always produce in abundance, they won't bother to take home more than they need. Water is free. Do people drink more than they need? There is a reason for the ugliness of Western culture. Many reasons, I would say, but the fact that it was founded and tied into greed, the need to store so much and work and fight so hard for something to store, stands out from the other reasons. This man that you work with, I know about cats like him. They never take more than they can give. So that sounds like a near perfect relationship. You have to ask cats like that for something hard to make them relax. Love you, George. June 27th, 1970. Dear G, the man who has never received a kind message, a gesture, and who has never held anything of value, material or otherwise. If he is healthy, or I should say remains healthy, my persuasion presupposes original innocence, he never becomes so practical as to expect more of the same. Nothing. Less but never nothing. To be denied or rejected means less to this man, but never nothing. And if he is still healthy of mind, he knows he can't be practical. He can't afford practicality. His have-nothing status, the absence of the all-important controls, predisposes him to impracticality. He can never relax. He is or becomes the desperate man. And desperate men do desperate things, take desperate positions. When revolution comes, he is the first to join it. If it doesn't come, he makes it. But the significant feature of the desperate man reveals itself when he meets other desperate men, directly or vicariously, and he experiences his first kindness, someone to strain with him, to strain to see him as he strains to see himself, someone to understand, someone to accept the regard, the love that desperation forces into hiding. This significant feature in the desperate men and women, people, redeems them, redeems the revolution, alters the sanguine coloring of war, and gives revolution its love motive. Men who have never received and have had little occasion to express the love theme of original goodness respond in a very significant manner to that first real, spontaneous, gratuitous kindness. Those feelings that find no expression in desperate times store themselves up in great abundance, ripen, strengthen, and strain the walls of their repository to the utmost. Where the kindred spirit touches this wall, it crumbles. No one responds to kindness. No one is more sensitive to it than the desperate man. I'm trying to say thanks. Power to the people. Comrade George. June 28th, 1970. Dear Joan, I know you were here Thursday before I got the letter informing me of it. Our spirits met right there over the flower beds for a while. Then, too, I have my spies out. Tall, tan lady with huge, round blue eyes. They have turned away dozens of my visitors. Sorry to have put you through that. What exactly did they say? As soon as you finish with this letter, jump into your auto, find someone who will sell you some envelopes like the ones I generally send these messages in, long business envelopes, then find some a little larger. Go back home, write me a love note. Put the smaller of the two types of envelopes in one of the larger envelopes, include the love, and pass to me. I'm thinking of John now. I wish there was some way to talk with him in private. They ran him off too. They certainly must be sure of themselves. I mean sure of being able to convict and hold and get rid of me, because they're not very concerned about making me mad. And they know I don't forget. It's real early Sunday morning. You're probably asleep. When I'm finished with this, I'll join you in that dimension. And you're not shy at all. Power, love, George. June 30th, 1970. Dear Joan, you correctly sensed I am in a terrible rush all the time. This rush characterizes everything that flows from me. I'll take my time loving you, but when I come, I'll be fresh from some hurried encounter with the Minotaur and related problems. I'm not really shy either, a little defensive yet, but no one will listen. That's what happened to me, but it was in a good way. It crushed the egotism and the egocentric thing. I only wish to help in the work against the Minotaur. The question is, do these nice people really want to hear what I have to say as a victim of the First Order? Will they mistake it as extreme? Can these wonderful, gentle people understand that some extreme situations call for extreme remedies? That the only means of ever dealing with the situation that calls for movement is to get ahead of the people and pull, not the reverse. Get ahead and pull. You've heard that blank excuse. Don't get ahead of the people. Pull. And then the others will change if we pull them into something that demands adjustments, breakthroughs. The Otis's job will be to rebuild after I do my work. You, Minerva, will be his teacher. You mentioned once, well, you spoke of, quote, Jewish mama instincts, end quote. Are you Jewish? And what, in your view, is a Jew? That should keep you working for a while. All these years, I've never given it a thought. I mean, I've never noticed anything singular or, let's say, distinctly different, except in ways of love and, of course, the physical, personal features so pleasing to the inner man. Your daughter, I could breathe her in with one intake. I was referring to the auto accident when I spoke of her health. I've been worrying since I read that letter. Cuts, face, black eyes. She has 100 pounds on that wonderful little body. One long, slow breath. Tell her I am devoted to her, and although we can't be together now, I do want her to stay close as she can to me. From me come great feelings of warmth and all kinds of love. For Joan. George. July 8th, 1970. Dear Joan, this, my lovely one, is just a note. Troubled times here that preoccupy your comrades' attentions. Oh, I'm still here. They don't like it, however. Fools, to say the least. I have your 2 letters of Tuesday here with me now. I feel closer. Every things, people, complexities. Each time I see you. 2 times. I feel a little closer. What if people start talking nasty about us? You with those long legs and me with these long arms. I never feel shy around my other female army. You be cool, or I'll breathe you in. I feel so sorry for them both, Georgia and her man. If you say I should, I'll send him a line tonight. But don't think you twisted me around that white little finger. It will be a while yet before I give in completely to you. I dig you a lot. Love, George. July 28th, 1970. Dear Joan, it's certainly nice to have a wonderfully alive, intelligent woman in the hand. Every fingertip thanks you. I've been back in the cell for 10 minutes after waiting 45 for an escort. I saw you and John leave. You're almost as tall as he. I can't help but worry myself for him. Not in the same way that his parents worry. Actually, the opposite of that. My concern is that his development not be retarded. Our immediate family is relating to him in the exact manner that they related to me. Bitter experience has taught them nothing. He's clearly rejected selfish love and restraints. Their attitudes are forcing him to choose between them and the ideal. We oppress each other, smother and confuse with contradictions between the tongue and the act. They're pushing him away from them. You know he's already somewhat withdrawn. Fear responses. He said he was leaving the house there in Pasadena. That should cause some tidal waves of emotionalism. I advised him to guide his decisions by necessity first, feeling secondly. I wonder, though, if I was right. I'm chain smoking again. But you give me massive doses of relief. Thanks for the confidence, the tears, the love. We will win. George. Note. Anyone who doesn't sense this fundamental power of the people cannot be a guerrilla fighter. ECG. July 28th, 1970. Dear Faye, the possibility of us as persons misunderstanding each other will always rest on the fact that I am an alien. It will always be my fault. The secret things that I hide from almost everyone, and especially the people who are sweet and gentle and intellectually inhibited from grasping the full range of the ordeal of being fair game, hunted, and alien, precludes forever a state of perfect agreement. You dig what I'm saying? Now you've conceded this much. Keep it always in mind and strain with me. I feel threatened.
That's where we should begin. Recall how I attempted to explain that feeling, the singular and inclusive sense? Then add to this that even in the days of my darkest confusion, when I was at once myself and not myself, my response to this feeling, and I've always felt threatened, was one from the older section of my brain. Being an alien has never or seldom made me feel sheepish. In the inclusive sense, my politics, you'll find all of the atypical features of my character. I may run, but all the time that I am, I'll be looking for a stick, a defensible position. It's never occurred to me to lie down and be kicked. It's silly. When I do that, I'm depending on the kicker to grow tired. The better tactic is to twist his leg a little or pull it off if he can. An intellectual argument to an attacker against the logic of his violence, or one to myself concerning the wisdom of a natural counter-violence, borders on, no, it overlaps the absurd. I just don't subscribe to that Superman shit. I've seen too many men cry, seen them in all postures of the common infirmity, death. My message to black people and to sweet, gentle, much-loved people like yourself will be the same message I receive from my brain for myself. It will be the same as long as we have the same problem. It will be the same coming from the living, loving brain or from the grave. They just put a new light in front of my cell. I'll be able to break up my days as a wish. Or not break them, just keep on going. Just keep going, straight ahead, right on. You're like no one I've ever met from across the tracks. I do think a very great deal of you, and I'm certain that you do try to understand our problems. Don't mistake this as a message from George to Faye. It's a message from the hunted running blacks to those people of this society who profess to want to change the conditions that destroy life. These blacks are still in doubt as to whether those elements across the tracks want this change badly enough to accept the U.S. being physically brought to its knees to attain it. Will the weathermen always be a microscopic minority, working outside the protection of all their people, instead of with the support of an aggressive political cadre? I dig them and love you. Finally and always, power to the people. George. August 9th, 1970. Real date, 2 days A.D. Dear Joan, we reckon all time in the future from the day of the man-child's death. Man-child, black man-child with submachine gun in hand. He was free for a while. I guess that's more than most of us can expect. I want people to wonder at what forces created him. Terrible, vindictive, cold, calm man-child, courage in one hand, the machine gun in the other. Scourge of the unrighteous, an ox for the people to ride. Go over all the letters I've sent you. Any reference to Georgia being less than a perfect revolutionary's mama must be removed. Do it now. I want no possibility of anyone misunderstanding her as I did. She didn't cry a tear. She is, as I am, very proud. She read two things into his rage: love and loyalty. I can't go any further. It would just be a love story about the baddest brother this world has had the privilege to meet. And it's just not popular or safe to say I love him. Cold and calm, though. All right, gentlemen, I'm taking over now. Note: the author quotes his brother's words from the San Rafael courthouse. End note. Revolution. George. End of Soledad Brother. The Prison Letters of George Jackson.